Welcome to the Agility in Real Life podcast, Take 5 in Real Life. Now your hosts, Mike Studeman, Jeff Lee, and Pat Campbell.
Hello and welcome back to the Take 5 IRL podcast. I'm Jeff Lee, a partner at Agility IRL and one of your hosts. And today, again, I have Kelly Weyrauch with me from Agile Quality Systems. Welcome back, Kelly.
Hi again, Jeff and everybody.
Yeah, so as a reminder, if you missed our last episode, so Kelly has and Kelly's a partner of ours. We work with him quite a bit in the medical device side of things, and he has real deep experience, including being part of the group that wrote TIR 45 in conjunction with the FDA on how to satisfy FDA regulations while also using Agile delivery. So Kelly, if you could talk a little bit about that TIR 45 experience and what does the FDA want? What's important to them with Agile delivery?
So the TIR 45 committee originally got kicked off because there were medical device manufacturers that were starting to use Agile in the mid-2000s, and they had concerns about what regulators would think when they noticed it. So it started from the industry wanting guidance. But as the committee got put together with FDA participation, they really wanted a guidance that not only defended why Agile could be a good thing, but showed regulators how it could be applied in a safe and effective way, recognizing that this was new to the regulated world, just as it was new in the manufacturing world before. We had to teach people about what Agile was and how it can apply quality system principles.
So was that a tough sell?
Initially, there were some concerns, but I think the open-mindedness of the people on the committee were, this is the thing that we need to investigate and learn how it can apply. And as we were writing the TIR, the FDA got more and more enthused by saying, this is the kind of thing we're looking for. We're looking for this level of design control in your processes. So that kind of tees into what's different. What's different about the medical device world as opposed to other software development organizations and domains is it is regulated. There is guidance and rules from regulatory bodies. There's regulations that you have to follow to get a medical device approved, either in the US through the FDA or international organizations. So there's a high level regulation you have to meet, but those regulations are very broad. In the software world, those regulations are supported by a standard, a medical device standard. The 62304 software development standard is a way to satisfy regulations. And so that's part of what's different in the medical device world is there is an established standard for what good software development looks like for medical device software. The challenge with that 62304 standard is it looks like any other process standard. It's laid out in a certain order that implies a linear model. Even though the standard and the regulations say we do not demand any particular life cycle model, we do not demand a specific process. These are the activities you have to have in your process, but how you do them is up to you. So the standard says that, but yet it looks like a very linear waterfall process.
Why do they do that? Why would in that document, why does it display one way but describe it a different way?
The simple phrase I've been using for years is a nice linear flow is a fine logical way to describe a process. It's just a lousy way to execute one. It makes sense to describe them in this certain order, but it doesn't mean you have to execute them in that certain order. There's a logical relationship, but how we execute them depends on the lifecycle model that you choose.
Got it. All right. So what are some keys, the companies you work with who've really made TIR 45, oh, and by the way, technical information report 45 for people who aren't intimately familiar with that. How do companies make that work?
So the TIR is a industry guidance from the AAMI Association that gives guidance of how to satisfy regulations and standards. So while it is not required by law, you can't claim conformance to it as a standard. It's not a standard. It provides recommendations of how to apply the Agile concepts in a regulated environment. So the way it's used in organizations is they use the guidance from TIR 45 to describe their processes for software development, showing how those processes satisfy the expectations of that standard, 62304, and therefore the higher level regulations. Part of what the motivation for this was to demonstrate that we are in control of our process. The regulation that affects product development in the FDA is called design controls. And what the FDA people on the committee emphasized is design controls are the controls that must exist in your process. It's not a process, it's the controls that have to be in place. And so the TIR talks about how do we establish a process and a life cycle that demonstrates we're in control.
Gotcha. So I want to pause on that for just a second, just to make sure people understand that. So the design controls themselves are not a process, but those elements need to be present in your company's process.
Yes. So there's a control on design inputs. Well, what's a design input? It depends on the nature of your system. We think of it as requirements. Well, is that one pile of requirements, or is it a complex structure of requirements mirroring the structure of your system? Regulations don't know that because they're governing all kinds of systems and devices. So they're saying, in general, you need to tell us what your inputs are, and you need to be in control of them. Likewise, you need to be in control of your outputs. Well, what are your outputs? It depends on the nature of the system that you're developing. You need to be in control of them.
Perfect. So do you have an example of where this has worked? I know you've worked with a lot of companies to do this. What makes it successful? What's an example where it really worked well?
The key to me is getting the people who are what I call the defender of the quality system, the people who either own the quality system processes or, more importantly, interface with the external world, regulators, either in a submission or in a compliance audit, that those people, those roles need to really understand how Agile works and how it's applied in their context. In the organizations that we've given the CARS course, for example, when the regulatory or quality people, depending on the organization, is sometimes some of each, the regulatory people who have to provide the submission to regulators to get a product approved, or the quality compliance people who have to defend the quality system in an audit, really know how TR 45 is applied, and they've embraced the concepts in their process. That's what makes it work, is the quality people know that we can defend this in a way that regulators will understand and are close enough to the teams using it to know that this is helping us produce safe and effective products. We're glad we're doing it.
Yeah, I would say definitely of the CARS classes that I've been involved in, when we have people who represent many different areas in the system, obviously quality regulatory being paramount, but also your PMO, also your engineering leads, like across the spectrum. It's amazing to see people talk to each other and hear each other in a way they've never done it before.
Mm-hmm. So this is part of the FDA was looking for, or what the industry was looking for and asking from Amy for, and that the FDA was helping it guide is, what does the FDA want to see about Agile? And one of the fundamental questions that we tried to answer was, well, what does the FDA think of Agile? And we asked this a couple times in the TIR committee, and the answer came back as, it depends on who you ask. On the regulatory submissions side, it turns out that for a submission, they really don't care too much about whether you're using Agile methods. On the submission side, they're caring about the final result. How do you know you have a safe and effective product? What did you do in order to ensure that? How did you get to a good place? They don't care about the mechanism you took to get there. It's in the compliance side where they start to care. When compliance is evaluating, how is your process set up? How do you do the things you say you do? What are the evidence that shows us that you are in compliance with design controls? If you're able to answer that question, you're putting yourself in a good position with the regulators.
Perfect. Any parting thoughts on this episode?
Another emphasis on get the TIR 45 and apply it. Read it, understand it, and use some of the guidance in defining your quality system process. Puts you in a good light, not only with regulators, but it helps you develop safe and effective products.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kelly. And in case it wasn't clear from the podcast, Kelly has a fair amount of passion around this, as do we at Agility IRL, to make this work in the med device space, since we've all had a lot of time there. Probably not many people more than Kelly combining Agile and medical device. So reach out to us if you'd like to talk more. We're happy to have that conversation. And thanks for joining us for another episode of the take5IRL podcast. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the take5IRL podcast. If you like it, please go ahead and share it with someone, as well as like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, leave us a comment or a suggestion for a future episode. Again, thanks for listening, and we look forward to you joining us next time on the Take 5 IRL podcast.